Hey everybody, I want to take a moment to give a special thanks to Miss Leslie Bankston here at Bankston Law Firm. She has opened up her beautiful office for us to use as a studio for the next few episodes. Mr. Otto Goodwin, thank you for coming, letting us in the building, showing us around, giving us amazing ideas of where to shoot from with the best lighting, the best camera angles. We appreciate it so much. If you or your family have any need for a law firm or prosecutor, land successions, any legal advice, please do not hesitate to come visit them over here at Bankston Law Firms in Albany, Louisiana. Again, from the bottom of our heart, God's Coffee Call thanks you so much. Hey y'all, I'm your host, Brooke Kinchin. Welcome to God's Coffee Call, a place where there's always a fresh brewed conversation happening of personal testimony and life experiences. So grab a cup of coffee, pull a chair to the table, and join our conversation. Welcome everybody back to the next episode of God's Coffee Call. I am your host, Brooke Kinchin, and today I am joined by a very special guest, my beloved friend, Miss Monica. She is here with me this morning, and we're going to tell her amazing story. But before we do that, thank you so much for joining us. If you are a constant listener and you follow us, thank you so much. If you've not, could you take a moment, hit the subscribe button, the like button, share in your comments, share it to your social media, and just let everybody know that they need to come over to God's Coffee Call and have a conversation. We invite everybody to just come pull up to the table and talk with us. And that is what we're going to do today with Miss Monica. I met Monica we were just talking two years ago, somewhere around there. I was working at the daycare where your daughter went. Mm-hmm. There was a revival happening in our town, and we just kind of got to know each other through that. And the Lord has just brought us together. Amen. Just a friend that I didn't know that I needed. Amen. I guess maybe a friend I knew I needed, but I didn't know where to find. Yes. And just kind of a happy little God wink moment. And you and your husband, Mitchell, who was here a couple weeks ago with us, are a very big part of the backbone of God's Coffee Call. And I don't tell you that enough, and I told him that. We are pushed daily and weekly because of you and your family, and supported beyond what we could ever express. And so there are not words to fully express how grateful we are to you guys. I know. She's like, no. But honestly, there were, when we started this thing, there were people that got behind us that just pushed and said, hey, and just when I feel like I was at a standstill and a stop, they would say, hey, what about this? Have you thought about this? What about this? And you and your family were some of those people, and still are some of those people. Weekly, you have this conversation where you push me to think about something different instead of new. So I just want to thank you, first of all, for that, and then also for being here. So are you ready? I'm ready. All right, y'all. I'm so excited. This story is a story that I know little bitty pieces about, but every time we talk about it, I learn more. And so I want to start at the beginning. Little Monica is born. Let's start there.
Well, I don't really remember much, obviously early days, but I think memory starts around 3 or 4. I remember my sister being born, which is weird because you don't think you remember that stuff, but I think whenever you go through trauma, it's, you remember more of that than you do the good times. So, I just remember I have an older sister. She's actually a half-sister. We lived in Walker. My sister was born. Life was kind of just going on. My biological dad was a really bad alcoholic, to the point where, we weren't his punching bags, but my mom was. So he would beat her a lot. And my older sister decided one day, I probably was about 4 this time. So my sister Michelle, we're a year and a half apart, so she was probably 2.5. He beat my mom up pretty bad, put a knife to her throat and stuff, and that's kind of where memory starts. She ran away to the neighbor's house and called the cops. And the cops came and, you know, arrested my dad, obviously. We had to go to court and this kind of stuff. And, you know, the court actually gave my mom an option and said, hey, you can have your daughter or you can have your husband, but she can't have both. And she chose her husband. So my older sister at that point went into a foster care home and was adopted. And me and my younger sister, we went into 2 different foster care homes. We were
So all
separated.
three of you, all three different homes.
They took all 3 of us because she wouldn't leave them.
Right.
You know, and back then, however many years ago that was, you know, because I'm 42 now, the state, they gave your parents options after options. I mean, you could stay in foster care for years and your parents could still be trying to get you back. But my older sister got adopted. My parents went through the parenting classes that they needed to do and, you know, was going to AA and all that stuff. And so we went home. We stayed with them, started kindergarten. You know, my sister started school. We kind of was just living life, you know. He was still an alcoholic. He was still, you know, beating her. She was on drugs, but I didn't know at that time that it was drugs, you know, because when you're young, you see these things around, but you don't realize till later.
Right.
Oh, okay. But I remember, you know, every Sunday we would get in the back of the truck and we would drive to Biloxi and we would go sleep on the beach. Like, that was one of my childhood memories that I remember being happy.
Wow.
You know, like the happy moment. We did that for a while, and then I guess at some point my mom and dad decided to separate. They got a divorce. We kind of went separate ways. At that point, we were kind of doing the one weekend thing with my dad and with my mom and stuff like that. We lived in, they were called the La Rouge Motel, going into Baton Rouge off of 190. And we moved in there, and she was a maid for the hotel. And my dad, he was a painter. That was like what he did. He painted buildings and stuff like that. He was still an alcoholic, but he was one of those functioning alcoholics. So he could get up every day and go to work, but come home in the afternoon, and that was just his thing. And he was a violent one, but he was never violent with us children. I loved that man. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but I just loved that man and adored him. Little time went by, my mom, we lived at the La Rouge Motel, and there was a bar room that was next to it. And I remember there were many nights where she would go over there, and that's just where she would hang out. And me and my sister Michelle, we would be at the hotel by ourselves. At this point, I'm probably 6.
Wow.
I guess.
And Michelle's younger than you, so a 6 and 4-year-old?
Yeah, 6 and like a 4.5-year-old. And I just remember we never really had any food, and so we always had these dry Frosted Flakes cereal. That's what we would eat. And I would give her a Coke in a bottle to feed her, because I didn't know what I was doing at 6 years old. Right. And so we would just stay there by ourselves. And then one night, my mom brought a man home, and she said that's who she was going to be with. And so let me back up. Before she met him, she was a prostitute for a little while. We didn't realize what she was doing, again, until I was older. We would get off the school bus at the hotel, and we would have to sit outside on the sidewalk and wait, because there would be a man in there. Wow. So me and Michelle would just sit on the sidewalk and wait, and then when they were finished whatever they were doing, he would leave. We would go inside and just live life.
Wow.
Super weird.
All right, but let's just pause. There's lots to digest. 6 and 4-year-old, and you're getting off. Obviously, you had to probably be a little bit older to be getting off the school bus, but not much older.
Yeah, well, I was 6, and Michelle, you know, like I said, was 4, and back then you could start
kindergarten, right? Yeah. Wow. And sitting on the curb there, waiting.
Just waiting, because that's how she was making her money. She was doing that and being a maid.
Got you. Okay.
How we lived.
Wow.
And then she met the guy Ray. And when she met him, we moved out of the hotels and we moved into a trailer in Denham. And we would still go see my dad on every other weekend or whatever. And in that situation, he had a sister, my Aunt Barbara, who she was very active in our life. So she helped a lot when we were with him. Because again, he was still an alcoholic. And then we'll move into a trailer in Denham. And we're still going to see my dad on the weekends, every other weekend or whatever it was. Well, he is a very creepy man, and you could pick up on that pretty early on, even before the abuse started. There was something about him I just did not like. And my mom would leave and go to work, and I don't know where she was working at this time. Like, once we moved in there and this kind of started, things started kind of getting a little foggy for me. But there would be times, for some reason, I would be left alone with him, and I would tell my mom, like, I don't like staying with him. You know, something's just not right. And she would still just leave me. And so the sexual abuse started. And in that time, he would say, "Don't tell your mom, because if you tell her, I'm going to kill her." You know, kind of like, anybody you tell, I'm going to tell, you know, they're not going to believe you, or I'm going to kill them, kind of thing. And as a kid, you know, you believe them. You're like, well, I'm not going to say anything. And at that point, I started wetting the bed. After that, I remember I started, you know, wetting the bed a lot. And my mom would say, "Why are you wetting the bed so much?" I'm like, "I don't know. Just, you know, I am. You know, I can't help it."
Was it just you, or was it you and your sister?
It was just
or
me
you
at this
didn't know?
point.
Just you at that point. Okay.
And then, so it happened. I mean, it had to happen for a couple years, and I just kept it to myself. And then we went to my dad's house one weekend, and there were some behavioral issues. My dad just couldn't understand what was going on, so one day I just broke down and told him. I told him what happened. He lost his mind.
I'm sure. Right. So.
And he was already a kind of a violent man, you know.
Right.
So he lost his mind and called the cops. The cops came. We did the reports. We did all these things. We went to court, and you know, obviously he was arrested. We had to go do the forensics and all that. And it was proven, and he was arrested and went to jail. But I can vaguely remember there was this time we was at a McDonald's, because at this point we moved in with my Aunt Barbara, because they took us away from our mom. My dad's sister.
Your dad's sister, okay.
They took us away from her, obviously. And I remember we had a visitation at this McDonald's, and I remember her picking me up by my shirt and slamming me against the wall and telling me that I ruined her life.
Your mom?
Yes.
Wow.
And that I was a liar, that would never happen, I ruined her life. You know, I always want to take every man that she has away, and just nonsense. And as a kid, you are so confused. You're like, I don't understand how you can blame me for something that you allowed to happen. So we stayed with my Aunt Barbara for a while, and in the midst of that, there was a lot of arguing going on between mom and dad. My mom didn't want my dad to have us. My dad was trying to protect us, but couldn't really because he was fighting his own demons.
Right.
And my Aunt Barbara was at the point where she was like, I can't do this anymore. So at some point, somehow in the court system, they allowed us to start having visitation with my mom. When we did, she had her mother, which would be my grandmother. We would go see them sometimes, and my grandmother had a boyfriend whose name was Justin. Well, he started sexually abusing my sister. He never messed with me, but he sexually abused my sister.
Gotcha.
It was brought to light, and at that point, we couldn't go stay with my Aunt Barbara because there was too much fighting.
Right.
My mom obviously wasn't in any kind of position to protect her children, and my dad was an alcoholic.
So we're two little girls here.
We ended
Against
up
the
in
world.
foster care again. Yeah. And then at this point, we went into separate homes because there was a lot of behavioral issues out of me. We went into the same home at first, but the people who took my sister couldn't handle me because of my behavior. So they separated us, went into a different home.
And was there, I know back then, like now there's therapy and there's things like that. Back then, was there any kind of mediation therapy or any kind of?
There was, but again, back in the state back then, they would do anything they could to get you back with your parents. Now, you have like a year. And then within this year, if you haven't done some of the things you need to do to work toward getting your kids back with them, you're done.
Kudos to the state.
Yeah,
for,
right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we got all these left behind people things.
Exactly.
But, okay, all right.
So we so at that point we end up going to foster care here in Albany. To Miss Jerry Wainwright. We went to stay with her, and in the midst of this, we would go see my mom every Wednesday, and we would see my dad every Friday. They had obviously separate visitations because they hated each other.
Right.
We would go see them. They were working their plan, doing what they needed to do. My dad actually, at the very end, we were having overnight visits with him on the weekends because he was doing everything he needed to do. Right up until 3 weeks before we were supposed to actually go home and be released to him, he said he couldn't do it.
And how old do you remember about how old?
At this point, I'm 11.
Okay.
I'm 11 years old, and he said, we can't do it. I can't. I'm not gonna be able to keep up this lifestyle. My mom wasn't doing what she needed to, so she was off the table. So at that point, the courts got together. We had a court date. We went. My parents signed the rights away. Said, we can't do it. Sign this off. So at this point, you have two options. You either stay in long-term foster care, or you go up for adoption. The lady we were staying with did not do long-term foster care. So, there was like 4 other girls in her home. So she said, I can keep y'all until you get an adopted home. We're like, okay. So when you go up for adoption, it's the weirdest thing. You go and you take these pictures and you get put in a photo album. So people who want to adopt children look at this photo album and decide, hey, is this, a kid I would like to adopt, it's like a magazine. It's the weirdest thing.
Just let me process this.
Yeah.
Because
it's like a glamour shot for adopting.
right, it's like you're shopping online. It's like, oh, I'll take that one. That fits a kid, a human.
Yeah.
I have so many things to say that I don't know that it's right to say and appropriate to say. But as a kid, I couldn't imagine that as an adult, what my worth and my value of who I felt I was worth would be. You can't imagine as a kid saying, we're gonna take your picture and put you in a book and see if anybody wants to see, the self-worth and the value of who I see myself. I can only imagine the depths of. It makes me understand a little more now, knowing you and hearing that. It brings light, and even other people that I've known that have been in adoptive care, that constant. Because growing up without a dad, I always wanted somebody to tell me I was beautiful. I was the pretty little girl kind of thing, And so that is only intensified when you don't have a mom or a dad, and now you've been put into a lookbook. It makes so much more sense knowing and understanding people who have been in foster care and been adopted and walked through that, why they struggle so much with self-worth and their value and stuff, because we've just reduced you to a picture in a lookbook.
And it was hard because the whole time, I'm also trying to take care of my sister. I'm also trying to protect her and, trying to make sure that she's okay through the whole process.
And how do you explain something you don't even understand?
Right.
How do you, I don't know what to tell you because I don't really know what's going on.
And she was always the teeniest, little quiet. When we went into foster care the 3rd time, she was probably, I was 7 when we went in there because we stayed with her for 4 years. So she was 5.5. She was probably 80 pounds.
Wow.
And teeny little thing. And we never really ate. It was just like this situation. It's just. And then when we go to foster care, she has 4 other girls there as well. So she was doing the best she could, but this was not a situation for a long-term thing.
Right.
So she would feed us, but obviously it would be limited things. It was very strict, almost like a girls' home kind of thing.
Gotcha.
It was never a homey,
Home.
no.
Yeah.
She was by herself. She was a single lady.
Gotcha.
So you didn't see a mom and dad kind of thing. But what I will say looking back is God was already in that because her friend, my Aunt Janice, is now my Aunt Janice, who recently passed away, but it was her best friend.
Okay.
And that's the sister of the lady who adopted us.
Gotcha.
So we knew her before we even knew our adopted parents. He was already in it.
Right.
And so when it came down time to be adopted, it was between 2 families. There was a family in Mississippi that wanted us, and then
Our local thing.
and then the sister of Miss Jerry's best friend. and we wanted to stay here in Albany because I was in third grade. Well, I started in third grade in Albany, so we wanted to stay here. We kind of were already somewhat established for the first time in life. So we went to them. I had my 12th birthday with them. And the whole
First time you've been in a home with mom and dad,
Yes.
right? Semi-healthy mom and dad. Like,
Yes.
no drugs, alcohol kind of thing, like mom and dad. What
Like a
family should kind of look
Yes.
like. Got you.
They had 2 older sons. You know, one was already off and married by the time we got there, but one was in college. So, you know, we saw a family dynamic. You know, they had Thanksgiving dinners and they had Christmases. And, you know, I remember having a 12th birthday party there. And the one thing I always wanted was a caboodle. I'm like, I just want a little caboodle. And they got it for me for my 12th birthday. You know, and I was just like, wow.
Well, I remember my mom was here a couple episodes ago and she talked about my stepdad who served time in prison. And when he came out, the dynamic of a family and what that looked like was so foreign to him. Was it kind of like that for you guys? Like, were there times that you stepped back and been like, what is really happening? How do we associate that? Like,
Well,
how
my
was
sister,
that?
she dove into it.
Okay,
And I thank God to this day for them, for her.
gotcha.
Because they really gave her, they established a family and a foundation for her. And that to me was the most important. I was so angry
Right,
and just so over everybody that there's nothing you could have done
gotcha.
to help me
Yeah.
at this point. You know, as much as I saw, oh my gosh, this is a family, they're so great. I had so much stuff inside of me that she got adopted first. I said no, I don't want to be adopted. I'm not changing my name. I'm not doing that. You know, you are not my parents. Like that's how it was.
Wow.
She dove into it, got adopted, changed her name, and I don't even know how many years before me she did it.
And they still let you stay there with her? Still
Yeah.
stay, just you wouldn't,
Yeah.
didn't want to adopt, okay.
I'm like, no, it's not for me. And, you know, and I had a mouth. I was angry. I was just not a good kid. Like, and I know that I wasn't, you know. So kudos to them for trying.
Right, at least they tried.
They did. They tried.
Yeah.
I was a very difficult kid to try to handle. And at the same time, in their defense, they had never had girls. They had only had 2 boys. And how are you going to get a 12-year-old girl who's already been through
Hell and back.
Yeah, and think that you're going to be able to parent them.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah,
I have nothing negative to say about that.
awesome.
So we, life was going on, and we're like, okay, great. We had our own rooms, and you know, we got to put up new wallpaper, and we had our own beds, and it was just all these things that like you'd never experienced before. And my sister loved it. She was eating when she wanted to. She got all the snacks she wanted to. Like it was just so great for her, and I thank God to this day for that. My situation was different. I was just like very standoffish. I wasn't gonna try to get close to you because, you know, I had walls built up.
Even after spending so many years with them and realizing that I can trust them, the walls still just stayed up. That it wasn't strong enough to break those walls down. Okay.
Because, you know, there would be times that they didn't know how to parent me, and that's in their defense. Who in the world knows how? You know. So, you know, teenage years come on, and I would lie, and I would, you know, sneak out, and I would do all these things that normal kids do. But in their situation, they were so strict that there was no leeway for anything. And I was so tired of everybody telling me what to do.
Right.
So I met Taylor's dad.
Did y'all go to church or anything in the middle
Well,
of this ever?
My mom, she played the piano at the Hungarian Presbyterian Church. And we would go there every Wednesday night for choir practice. We went there every Sunday. Obviously, Hungarian Presbyterian was nothing for me. I got nothing out of it.
Well, this was really the first time you guys had been to church or anything,
Well,
right?
Miss Jerry, now back up, because Miss Jerry, she went to church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night. We were in a youth group at Albany First Baptist for the entire time we were there with her.
Okay.
So we went to church. But we were there with her. I got saved at 9 years old at Albany First Baptist. And it was just, you know, we were in Sunday school one day, and they were talking about, you know, Jesus died on the cross for you and save you, and if you get saved, you don't go to hell. And I was like, well, I don't want to go to hell. Save me.
Save me.
You know, so I got baptized, and My sister, same thing. A couple years later, same thing happened with her while we were there. We leave, we go to my mom and dad's house. Miss Barbara and Miss Ronnie, I called them that for a long time. I don't even remember when I first called mom and dad. And then she played the Hungarian, the piano there. We would go. But then when I was 17, I met Taylor's dad, Sean, and they didn't like that. And it was just, I was so tired of everybody telling me what to do and what I could do and couldn't do that I packed a garbage bag and I left. And never turned around. Like me and my sister.
17 years old.
17.
You don't like
was
going
a
on
junior in high
dates?
school.
You like to go on dates, so peace out.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Yep, I was like, I'm done. I'm already at the age now where I think I got life figured out. I could do this by myself. I could live on the streets, that's fine.
I mean, let's be, in reality, you'd been taking care of yourself and your sister since she was 4.
Yeah.
Like, so I can understand that reality. I've always done it by myself anyhow. This is just almost the next step. Like,
Yeah.
this is just the next.
And I knew that I was leaving her in good hands.
Right.
So I knew that, okay, I can let go for a little bit, and now let me go deal with what I need to deal with, and that's living life the way I want to do it.
Gotcha.
Now, the whole time we're going to church, we're going to youth group, I know all of these things, but there was something that I'm just like, none of this is sticking with me.
Well, and none of it, did any of it ever touch the root of what was happening in the past?
No.
It was just surface level, don't go to hell kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is standard.
Yeah.
In the society that we live in any church, no matter what denomination, sometimes it's just very surface level, let's check it off our box.
I didn't know anything about a relationship with Jesus. I didn't know that was something you were supposed to have.
Gotcha.
I was just like, oh, you get saved from the fire, you go to heaven, that's it.
Gotcha.
You keep doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
So left from there, left her in good hands. I knew that she was taken care of. I knew she was going to be okay. So I left. Went to stay with a friend for a little bit. That didn't work out because you can't really stay with your friends for long.
Right.
Moved in with Miss April for a little while. She took me in. Was trying to do the best that she could. And again, I was in a place where authority wasn't anything to me. Like, if you try to tell me what to do, I'm out. Let me live my life and how I want to. Everybody's controlled it forever. And so when I got kicked out of there because I didn't follow rules, which, looking back, I understand everything that I went through was my fault. But God's hand was in it all the entire time. When you look back and when you really get to where you are now, you look back and you're like, God's hand was there the entire time. He knew who to put you with, when to put you there, and He protected me.
Right.
So moved out of there and found my biological mom. I called the state and I said, hey, look, I'm looking for my biological mom. This is the name. I remember her.
17, 18?
I'm 17. Hadn't seen her since I was 11. Hadn't talked to her, seen her,
Let's
didn't know
just
anything about her.
find the lady and call her.
We'll just find her and call her.
What have we got to lose, right?
But we're at a garbage bag. We're either going to the street or we're calling her. What's your options?
Okay, but I love that you just flippantly say that. We're going to the street. I got a garbage bag. We're going to the street. Or we're going there.
It was literally
Like, that's the reality.
Yes. And and I was in such a mindset that I did not care. That I was not going to live anywhere where somebody was going to tell me what to do. So I would rather live on the street by myself than to follow any kind of authority. Because people had already disappointed me my entire life.
Yeah.
There was nobody that ever just stuck there no matter what I did or how many problems I had. There was nobody ever there just to say, I love you anyway. Like, let me help you get through this. It was always like, you're a bad child, you don't listen.
I love you if, this conditional.
It was
stuff,
always
right?
conditional.
Yeah.
And I was so sick of it. So I was like, that's fine. Nobody's gonna love you anyway. You're not worth anything. You're just pretty much damaged goods. Like, just go do what you want to do. So I did. And I found her, and they, told me where she worked and stuff, and I called her up, and she happened to be at work that day, and she answered the phone, and I was like, hey, this is your daughter. My real name's LaMonica. And that's the only thing she knew about. I was like, hey, this is LaMonica. And she dropped the phone. And
I can imagine.
just dropped the phone.
Because did she know where you guys were during this time?
No, it's a
Nothing.
closed adoption, so you're
Okay.
not allowed to know anything about your children once you sign your rights away. And she dropped the phone and just started crying. I said, hey, I need somewhere to live. Can I come live with you? And of course, she was like, yes, absolutely. You know? And this time I'm dating Taylor's dad. And he brought me and met her at a gas station. I hadn't seen her since I was 11 years old. I'm now 17. And we meet at a gas station. We're strangers. Literally. And I had no other option. And so I get in the car with her and her new boyfriend and some other man. PTSD.
I mean,
All over. But I did it because there was nothing else that I could have done. So, and you know, my adopted parents gave me the option to come home at that time. They were like, you can come back here, but they're going to be this. I'm like, no, I'm out. I'm out. Me and my sister did not talk for probably a good year and a half once I left because she did not agree with what I did. She didn't agree with me leaving, but she also is a totally different person from me.
did she understand, or was that always a thing against you? Did she understand why you couldn't accept family? No, because she so easily grabbed on it. She couldn't imagine, hey, this is what we've been longing for.
Yeah.
This is what we've been accepting and
Yeah, and
desiring.
she don't break rules. She's a rule follower and very, just whatever you say I'm gonna do kind of thing, and I'm totally opposite. So she never really understood why. So I lived with my biological mom for a little bit. She has a boyfriend and another man that lives there with her, and
That is wild, because we both have daughters.
Yeah.
And your daughter is almost the age of where you were at this time.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Taylor saying, peace out, I'm going to get in a car with somebody and two men and just with a garbage bag?
That's for her every day.
Like, I could not even imagine.
No. But at this point, my adopted parents pretty much gave up.
Yeah.
They were like, okay, this is your decision. Because whenever I left that night, they called the cops. Because I said, I'm either leaving in the back of a cop car or I'm leaving on foot.
I remember you told me that the other day, I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah, but one way or the other,
This is
I'm
it,
leaving
leaving.
this house. So they called the cops, and the cops said, she's 17, she can go and do what she needs to do, and you're not held responsible. So they emancipated me after that. And it was me against the world. But I will say that Taylor's dad was a big part of that part of my life and helping me because, I was still in high school.
right.
Like, how was I going to get back and forth to school?
Yeah.
So at this point, it's probably the end of my junior year, going into the summer of my senior, start of my senior year. I'm like, what am I going to do? How I have no car, I have no money, I have nothing. How am I going to do this school thing? She worked at Burger King, got a job at Burger King, was making $5.25 an hour, saving my money. I paid for all my senior supplies. He would drive back and forth from Hammond, he worked at what they see at the time. He would drive back and forth from Hammond to Watson with me because I was
Which is like 30, 40 minutes, something like that, every day, every night.
And then everyone for school. And
So he was really kind of the first constant in your life?
Absolutely. He was definitely the first constant and the one thing that I clung on to the hardest.
Because he didn't hurt you, he didn't disagree with you.
He didn't leave
Right,
me.
he didn't leave you.
No matter all my baggage, all
Right.
of my issues, he was still there. And so I ended up getting a little car. I bought a little car from his mom. Saved my money at Burger King and bought a little car, so I was driving myself back and forth to school now. Graduated high school, we moved in together. Because his parents were big, and like, no, your girlfriend can't live with us.
Right.
Which I respect.
Please, yes,
Absolutely. Please
These
don't
parents.
let me do that because
please.
life could have been a lot different.
Right.
We bought our first trailer from his brother. We were just living life, walking the world. I was dabbling in drugs. Weed was something that I was addicted to and needed all the time for my anxiety. That was the one thing that I felt like could kind of take away all of my anxiousness.
Mm-hmm.
We would go to church every now and then. We were those churchgoers that go for Christmas and Easter.
Mm-hmm.
It's Christmas, we're going to go to church. And then when we leave church, we'll do our own thing.
Yeah,
Easter.
Brandon, my husband calls them CEOs, Christmas, Easter, other occasions, like there some special occasion kind of thing. Yeah.
That was us.
Okay.
And I was saved. So, I'm saved doing all of this. And the whole time, you don't feel conviction, but you're like, this isn't right. You're just like, I know that this isn't right, and I know that there's something else, but I'm too far gone. That's your mindset. You're like, I'm too far gone. God's not giving up on
We're
me.
this deep in, might as well keep digging.
He's not giving up on me just like everybody else. The only person that hadn't given up on me was Sean. And we decided to get married at 21. We got married at 21, which we had no idea what we were doing. We were kids. 17 years old, we're growing up together thinking this is what we're supposed to do. We get married, he's working out in DC, I'm still working, we're both managers, we're just living life, doing our own thing. And we ended up having Taylor when I was 27. So, we were together a good chunk of life. And instead of us growing up together, we kind of grew up or grew apart. We both wanted different things. There were different things that I wanted. There were different things that he wanted. It just wasn't clashing anymore. Right. And then we add a baby to that. Yeah. That changes a lot of things.
Right.
She didn't change it. We did. And I still had issues. I still had things that were not healed. I was still in a place where, I had anger. And no matter how much he tried to love me, I couldn't allow those walls to fully fall out, even with him.
Because even though he was that constant and he was there and supporting, that only lasts for a little bit, right?
You're always waiting.
You're always, just...
You're like, I'm gonna do one thing. Something's gonna happen and you're gonna leave me.
Right. And then you add a baby on top of that and not knowing how to be a mom because you never had a mom.
Never.
Like that whole waiting thing on top of all the trauma and the stuff that you still got going on. Yeah, I can imagine.
But I knew the second I had her, I was like, I will never allow her to feel the things that I've felt in my life. I will do everything I possibly can. I will protect her
at all costs
to the end of it. There's nothing I would ever do.
And there's something about going through trauma and going through stuff that you get to a point where you're like, I'm either going to continue the cycle because that's all I know, play that victim card, or it's going to be, no, stopping here. It's not going to be like this, and I'm going to fight hell, high water, come whatever it may.
Yes.
We're going to change this thing and do something a little different.
Yes.
And so that's where we were with Taylor, right? Got you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we would go to church, so I would bring her to church. She was really little, she would go to church with us on the times we went. And then we finally just decided, this was not working between us. We were both very, very unhappy.
Right.
So we decided to go our separate ways. Here I am, a single mom, starting over yet again.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, why can I not just stick it somewhere? You know what I'm saying? Why is it always you're moving here, you're moving there? There's always these moving pieces and you can't just stop. Mm-hmm. I could never figure out what I was searching. What am I trying to, I'm missing something, but what am I missing?
Right.
And we got our own places. I was a single mom at this point, working, putting her in daycare. We're doing a split custody thing, and the times that I did not have her were probably some of the darkest days. So that was pretty difficult in those times because, you think back and you're like, okay, my little girl is going off with her father. I don't know what's going on. I trusted him. He wasn't going to hurt her, but you're still thinking back to all the things that happened to you.
Right.
And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not there to protect her.
Right.
What am I going to do? So those were some of the darkest days. Eventually, I met my now husband, just working and doing the thing and, met him and we just kind of hit it off. It was weird. We knew of each other because he would come in where I worked and we would say, hey, how are you kind of thing. And then one night we ran into each other at Academy and he's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what are you doing here?
Right.
I'm like, I live here. He's like, me too. I was like, oh.
Like in the same old town.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's cool. Because we would only see each other in Walker.
Gotcha.
Here we are in Hammond.
Right.
And he's like, hey, can I have your number? And I was like, sure. But I'm thinking, you have no idea.
Right.
That I got baggage.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm like, sure. So we start texting back and forth. We didn't even know each other's names for probably 2 days. And we're like, and we just hit it off from there. And it was weird for me because now I'm at a stage where, one, I've already went through a divorce. I'm a single mom. And now here's this handsome guy that wants to date me.
Right.
You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. That's what I'm thinking.
If you only knew.
I'm such damaged goods.
Right.
You know, like, I'm not worthy to be loved.
Yeah.
Like, what?
You're like, I exist in a lookbook somewhere, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to cause more trauma in your life.
Right.
If you love me.
Yeah.
You know? But the Lord knew what he was doing. We start dating, and I had a firm rule. You cannot be my daughter until I know that me and you are going to be okay. Because I know how it is to have men and women in and out of your life, you know, growing up. You don't know who you're going to love, who's going to stay, and I never want my child to ever feel that way.
Right.
We decided to move in together. Before marriage, I don't advise that.
Do church, no church?
Me and Taylor would still go to church every now and then. You know, again, Christmas, Easter, events.
But there's no relationship. It's
nothing. There's nothing. There's no
Christmas.
prayer life.
Right. Yeah.
There's nothing. There's nothing.
nothing.
There's nothing.
Right.
And walking the world, ooh, man, just you would not think I was a Christian. You would look at me and someone would say, "Monica's a Christian." They're like, "Absolutely not." Have you heard the way she talks?
Yeah.
I mean, she don't go to church. That girl is not a Christian. So you would have never known.
Right.
And so we ended up moving in together. He would go fishing and kind of just do his own thing. And at this point, there seemed to kind of be some sort of shift in me. I don't know what it was, where I wanted to go to church more. Because I wanted my kids to somehow have a foundation. Because even being in foster care, my foster mama, she gave that.
Right.
She introduced church to us.
Yeah.
So I felt like, okay, well, maybe if I introduce it to her, maybe God can do his thing with her,
Yeah,
and she won't be like me.
Right. She wanted to experience what I experienced.
Let the church take care of her.
Got you.
Instead of me.
Got you.
You know? And I would drag him to church every now and then. I could get him to come.
Yeah.
Very, very seldom, but sometimes.
Yeah.
Then we go through a flood together. We're living in a camper, and we're buying a home, and we're rebuilding the one that flooded. And you know, I was running 2 Starbucks at the time, and I was just stressed to the max. And I was like, something has to give. So he said, "Well, just quit your job."
Oh.
I'm like, "What?"
Sure, why not?
He's like, "Just quit your job." I'm like, "Well, we have to get married first. You know, like, we have to be married." And I would tell him, because he had never been married, never had kids. And just the whole transition of us being together with me having Taylor, he would always struggle to find his role, and so would I. Because what is your role?
Right.
You're not her dad, and her dad was always still in her life,
Yeah.
so it wasn't like her dad was not there.
Right.
Like, you're not her dad, I'm her mom, but I'm playing both roles because you're the boyfriend.
Right.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
So I said, well, we have to get married. So we got married, and I told him we will not have kids after wedlock. I mean, we moved in together, but I'm not having children unless we're married.
Yeah.
And we get married. I quit my job. Here I am now. A month later, found out I'm pregnant with our baby.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have a little Marley. And I took off of work for 1.5 years to stay home with her because I never got to experience that before.
Right.
And, you know, Mitchell allowed that, and, you know, he provided for our family. And then I get the job at Next Tech.
Right.
So then I start the whole, you know, because I had worked since I was 16 years old, and taking off for 1.5 years, I'm just like, what am I supposed to do with myself? Like, I'm not worthy of this, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I'm supposed to be working and doing my thing to provide as well. I don't want to rely on anybody, because the second you rely on somebody is the second.
Still all that stuff, right?
Yeah,
Still
the second
packed in
you
there.
just break the walls and you start relying on somebody, that's the second you're going to get hurt.
And then they'll be able to be an authority over you.
Yeah.
And then they're going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to have to listen to them, and I'm not putting myself in that situation. Earlier you mentioned that you had done like weed and stuff to help the anxiety. Are you still doing that? Is that still part of your life?
So
or other
when
drugs or alcohol or anything?
When I wouldn't have, no, I never would dabble. I didn't dabble in alcohol a lot because I was terrified to become
Because of your dad?
Yeah, I did not want to
Gotcha.
become an alcoholic. I always looked at alcohol as like that's scary, you know,
Okay.
because you don't know how you're going to be on that. With weed, you could function.
Gotcha.
Nobody would even know.
It just kind of took the edge off and just,
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I wouldn't do it when I would have Taylor.
Okay.
When she wasn't with me, yes, I would.
Mhm.
You know, it was just something that kind of helped me in those times where I didn't have her.
Gotcha.
When I had her, though, I was all in.
Gotcha.
It was like, this is my baby. She's going to see the best side that I can probably possibly give her, which at that point was so damaged that I didn't really know what I was giving her. I was just giving my best.
Yeah.
And then once we got married and had Marley, no. That was something that kind of, I would dabble in when I could, but it wasn't like a constant thing like it used to be.
Right.
But it still wasn't taken away. The desire wasn't taken away. I still would anytime I could.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Marley. Then we, you know, sell our house. We start building a house, that kind of thing. And then the whole time Mitchell was not really engaged as even in having Marley. You know, he wasn't even there the second day. Like I had Marley that night. He stayed with me the first night, but the next morning he had a fishing tournament to go fish.
He shared that a couple weeks ago. Yeah, in his story, he's like, he talks about fishing being his God, and he's like, it was so bad, we had a baby the next morning. Even though my wife said it was okay, I went fishing. He's like, I now know that even though she said it was okay, I probably shouldn't have done that.
No.
He's like, but it was so my God, that's what I did.
Because my father-in-law brought us home from the hospital and stuff instead of him. He wasn't even there. And I was in such a place of, I have somebody that loves me. He sees all the bad that I bring, because even in this time, I'm an emotional wreck.
Yeah.
Like, I am bleeding on people that didn't even cut me.
Right.
You know, like he was dealing with so much from me emotionally that I'm surprised he even stuck around. Because if it would have been me, I wouldn't have.
Because we still have all the trauma because we've not dealt with it. We just keep adding things.
I'm still
on top
such an angry person.
Yeah.
Like the job I had, I could just flip. And my anger used to be so bad, I would just flip tables and break frames. And I'm talking just like to a point where it's like you black out. It's so uncontrollable because you cannot deal with what's inside of you, and it just comes out on the dumbest stuff. But he stuck around. So when he would want to go fishing, the last thing I would want to do is be like, no, don't go. Because then I'm like, what if he gets mad? What if he leaves? What if he, you know, so sure, we just had a baby. You want to go fishing? Go ahead.
Sure.
Go make yourself happy.
Don't disrupt the boat.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of constant, you're kind of steady.
Yeah.
But I don't want to lose.
And I mean, you let me quit my job.
Right.
And you know, you're providing. So of course I want you to have your free time.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm drowning.
Yeah.
You know. So we have her. We build a house, and in the midst of all this, revival comes to town. You know, so we're still those people that go for church, go to church on Christmas, Easter. I would put my kids in VBS. When we would go, I'd put them in children's church because again, I'm like, okay, church, do your job.
Do your job, yeah.
Teach my kids about Jesus because I can't.
Yeah.
You know, there's no relationship. I don't know what to teach them. What am I supposed to say?
I'm here checking my box off. You check your box off.
This is your job, not mine.
Teach about Moses to Peter, all these things.
Yes, teach them all these things.
Yeah.
And so revival came to town, and
let me share with that real quick for our viewers. There was a small church here in our town. A guest speaker was supposed to be here for a week, and the Lord just broke out in our little bitty town on the back roads of South Louisiana. Literal revival, changing hearts. Hundreds of people, lives are beginning to be changed to the point that they had to move from the church building to a huge circus blue tent in the middle of a local field here. So when we say revival hit our city. So you're at this church, and you're going to this church with these times, right? It's
I just started about 2 weeks prior to that because things started shifting. You know, I was like, okay, I have 2 kids now. Like, something's got to shift. I need somebody to teach them about Jesus.
Right.
I need them to have some sort of foundation. And then at the same time, things are starting in my heart. You know, the Lord's already preparing the way.
Right.
We know how He does.
Yeah.
But, you know, running, whatever. I always refer to myself as the prodigal son. You know, because you can only run so long.
Right.
And so, you know, revival comes, and my sister's like, hey, you want to go to revival with me? I'm like, yeah, let's go. Marley's really little. So we go. I would bring her to the nursery, and Mitchell would come after work and pick her up and take her home. I think it was like the third or fourth night he preached on Your First Night in Hell. It was D.R. Harrison. Let me just say this. Brother D.R. gets a lot of hate in this community, but I will tell you one thing. That man is a vessel for the Lord, and he planted some seeds here, and you cannot deny the fruit from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
My entire family's been changed from it, and a lot of people that I know.
Right.
That's exactly what we needed to come through here.
Yeah.
I know I needed it.
Yeah.
He preached on the first night in hell, and he preached on Matthew, where, they're saying, we've cast out demons in your name, we've done all these good works in your name, and he said, depart from me, for I never knew you. That hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh my gosh, the Lord's going to spit me out. Like, he's going to tell me, depart from me, because look what I've been doing all these years. Like, I haven't done anything for him.
Going still in the title of I got saved when I was a teenager.
Yes, like I got saved at 9 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm walking this out from 9 till I'm now 40.
Yeah.
And, well, what have you done, girl? Nothing. You've been living for the devil.
Right.
You've been checking these boxes off. You've been warming them pews as a CEO. You ain't done nothing, girl.
Right.
And that hit me. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I went to the altar and I literally cried out to the Lord. I was like, Lord, please don't leave me. Forgive me for all the things that I've done and not, walk this out with you, because you have had a hand in my life this entire time and how things could have changed for me had you not done that. And that makes me emotional.
No, I know.
It makes you emotional because you're like, look what the Lord has done for you, girl.
Yeah.
And you've been just straddling the fence, you've been living for the devil, and you expect the church to raise your kids. Girl, shame on you.
And we live so naively to the moments that God was there with us, right? Like, yeah, we had to walk through trauma, we had to walk through some really bad stuff, but just realizing that even in the middle of that, he still had his hand somewhere around us.
Because there was a purpose for it.
Yeah.
And you look back and you realize there was a purpose. Things don't just happen to anybody, And I saw this video once where it was this guy talking about some trauma that happened to him, and he's like, I experienced the Lord and knew that even in those scariest times, the Lord was sitting right there, going through those things with me.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual abuse, the Lord was right there with me, going through it.
Right.
Just the uncertainty, all of the things that happened, he was there the entire time and still placing the people where they needed to be. Now look, I had free will.
Right.
I ran.
Yeah.
I did my thing. He had another way for me. This is not what he wanted for me. But yet, here I am.
Here we are.
And so I was like, Lord, please forgive me. Don't leave me. Don't spit me out your mouth. Don't tell me depart from you. I don't, I know that I'm not worthy, but I know that you love me. And it just reminds me of how we are with our children.
Yeah.
There's nothing that they could ever do that would ever make us love them any less or leave them.
Right.
And that's how the Lord feels about us.
Right.
He's like, girl, I knew you was coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I got plans for you, So I went home that night. I was telling Mitchell about it, and the whole time when I was a single mom, I was still, even though I was walking in the world, it's like, Lord, bring me a spiritual husband. Bring me somebody that can tame me.
Right.
That can, change the atmosphere when I start just getting off track.
It's like that deep desire, that deep thing that we don't really express to anybody, but it's that deep growing inside of us.
Because I wasn't going to tell nobody anything I was feeling.
Because that would make us weak and vulnerable. And some walls would be exposed, right?
Yeah. We don't like that vulnerability. And so I went home and I was telling him about it and stuff. He was like, something's just different about you. That's what he told me. We were standing in our kitchen and I was like, I don't know what it is. All I know is things got to change. I got to start doing some things differently. And so my brother-in-law, he got saved at revival, which was mind-boggling. I'm like, okay. My daughter got saved at revival. My niece got saved at revival. So my husband's like, okay, well, what are y'all doing?
And 2 weeks ago he was here and he did the whole, I didn't know what all these people were being saved from. Like,
and imagine how I feel.
Right. Oh, we had this conversation.
And here you are living with this lady in a relationship with me for the last 4 years and you don't even know what you're being saved for.
Yeah.
That speaks a lot about us Christians today.
Yeah.
We just think everybody around us knows, Jesus saved. Well, Jesus saved you from what?
Right. Oh, he and I talked about that. Like when he said that to me, I thought, we live under the Bible Belt. We don't even live on the Bible. We live under the Bible Belt. Like anybody is exposed to Jesus and the gospel and the salvation. It's us in South Louisiana. And for him to say, I didn't know we was getting what we needed to be saved from. He just blew, especially in a small town.
Yes.
We got a church on every corner. We've got all kind of outreaches. We've got all these things that we've done for years. And there are still people in our community who don't even know what I'm supposed to be being saved from.
No, here we are just walking our daily lives, just, whatever, saved from the fire.
Yeah.
I mean, not talk to anybody else about it, know. But so he ends up going and he gets saved. And when I tell you, it was a complete and radical change in our home.
Yeah.
I'm talking like your brother said.
Mm-hmm.
You left school cussing on Friday and you came preaching on Monday.
Right.
That's how it was.
Wow.
Complete radical change.
Yeah.
And to me, at first, I was a little taken back, because I was like, whoa. I know I prayed for this, but I mean, whoa.
Right.
Because it was reading the Bible every night, praying together, we're doing scripture, we're doing all this, and I'm like, whoa. Okay, this is new.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole submit to your husband thing, that's still, I'm not going to lie, that's a struggle for me.
Right.
That's something the Lord's still working on me because that's still a lot of those walls that I got built up where it's just like, okay, girl, you can let go. Like the Lord's done healed you, girl.
Yeah.
Let it go. So he gets saved, radical change in this man, which I am so thankful for because he's at a point now where he can change the atmosphere.
Yeah.
When I start,
and he does.
When I start getting a little, like I'm talking, he is the most patient and just gentle. The Holy Spirit radiates outside of this man, just kind of sends it off. Where you're just like, okay, how are you gonna keep being mad at somebody who's just the most gentle giant? He
is like when we filmed a couple weeks ago. I remember coming back to work and telling you the cadence of his voice, he's just kind of settled in and he's not emotionally off the handle. And he's not emotionally. I mean, he talked with emotion. But he's just very leveled, and what a peace that brings to a situation, into a room. And when life has been chaos, he can just come in and just bring that peace and settle the room.
Yes, and the Lord knew I needed that because I'm the type of person that pours gasoline on fire. I'm not the one you call to diffuse situations. Right. So thank God the Lord sent me that.
She's like taking hell on with the piston. Like let's just do that.
Let's just do it. But yeah, so and the most, and in the midst of all this, I'm still have a relationship with my biological mom, And at some point throughout the years, me and my adopted parents, we started building a relationship together after me and Sean getting married, so relationships are being restored. Me and my sister started, we were close again. And, then last May comes around and my brother-in-law passes away and what happens to him. And in the midst of all that, I felt this backwards pull. Where I was like, okay, we've been on fire, we've been walking this thing out. While all of a sudden I feel like my flame's going out, because in the midst of all that, I felt so much guilt and shame because then it brought me back to, well, now I got to take care of my sister again, Right. It takes you back to, okay, well, now you're about to play a whole nother role that am I even healed from? Right. Am I ready for that? And so I carried a lot of guilt and shame, thinking, what could I have done? How could I have helped him more? Because I was with him that entire week before. Right. Just trying to encourage and lift him up. And then... And your sister's not been here, so listeners may not know the story. He passed away by self-infliction. Yes. And that was a process for your family to walk through. But you said something just a minute ago I want to talk about with having to take care of your sister now. A life that you thought maybe was finished and done, and that, okay, I can just put it to the side. I don't have to deal with it anymore. All the trauma and stuff that happened. She's happy, I'm happy. Let's just move on with life. We don't have to dig that up. And here we are now. He's gone. She's there with her two daughters. I feel like I have to take care of her again, even though it's not your responsibility. It will always be your responsibility as that sibling to take care of her. So we just uncover everything again on top of that. So yeah, that's been a process.
Wow.
But what I've learned, she don't need me to take care of her. The Lord's got her. And look, when you do meet her and you hear from her, you will know that she good.
She's good.
It ain't nothing I can do.
She might take care of all of us.
But yeah, so that happened, and so I felt this backwards pull, as in like, okay, why am I starting to feel some things that I used to feel, that I thought I was over, and then deliverance gets brought up, and my sister and my husband were big into it, and I was like, don't talk to me about that. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. We're Christians. Christians can't be have anything to do with demons. Y'all are crazy.
Right.
Don't talk to me about it. Don't speak to me about it. Don't show me videos. Nothing. And so for the longest time they wouldn't. And then I just kept feeling like something's not right. Like I am trying so hard. Like I'm trying to read my Bible. I'm trying to go to church and get something out of it. And at this point, in my opinion, I was going to a church that was not spiritually feeding me.
To the level that you needed now,
yes,
like up to this point,
where
I was this new level that was happening. Got you.
Yeah, and so eventually, I was introduced to Brian and Amanda Lesser, who are amazing people. If you ever get an opportunity to meet them, you'll be blessed. And we did the deliverance thing, and to me, that was life changing. Because at that moment going through it, it was like chains were broke off, and there was a bondage that I was released from.
Like letting go of our past, letting go of our trauma,
letting all of it go, the guilt, the shame, everything you're carrying. And I felt like for a while I was like, oh, I could do this thing.
And I want to talk about that for a second, because Mitchell, when he was here a couple weeks ago, talked about deliverance, and we're talking again. Sometimes I think a lot of people think deliverance has to be the screaming, the shouting, the throwing up, the this and that. And that is part of it sometimes, of things releasing off of your life that you held them. But sometimes it's just breaking off those mental mentalities, that mentality that's happened of, I didn't have value, I used to be just somebody in a lookbook, to he's called me beautiful. Like changing mindsets. And so I don't want listeners and people, if they're listening, to get caught up in the whole deliverance of it's got to be this exorcism kind of thing.
No.
In some regards it is. There are some people that walk through that, and that is part of it sometimes. But sometimes it literally is just saying, I renounce the way I used to think, and I'm turning the other way. I let go of who I used to be, and I'm running this way. And so I've seen that deliverance happening in you, because I remember I was working with you, and your sister and I were behind the scenes, and I'm like, she got some stuff she needs to let go of. There's some things she needs to talk about, and some walls to write down. And you were like, nope, don't talk to me about that. I'm totally against it. You come to my desk and my sister told me I need to do this, and Mitchell said I need to do that, and I'm like, well, when are you going to listen, kind of thing. But knowing that you had to do it on your own terms, and I remember the day you're like, I had this, you had some kind of dream or encounter or something, and I'm like, what are you waiting for?
Right.
Well, let's do it. And I remember you left that weekend, coming back completely different.
Yeah.
Like the whole, like you just said, you left Friday and came back different Monday. Like there was this change that happened in your life in that moment.
Yeah. And at that point, I was like, okay, girl, quit playing. You've got to do this thing. You got 2 kids that you're raising. It's not the church's job to raise them. It is your job. That is your grace ministry.
Come on, preach.
You're the mama. They're watching you.
Yeah.
No matter how much of a spiritual father you have in the family, if the mother's not on board, it's going to fail.
Oh, yeah. Because the dad's the leader, but the mom is that heartbeat. And if dad's trying to lead, your husband and I talked about this. I could want my husband to be as godly as possible, but if he's trying to pull and I'm pulling, we're just battling back and forth. There's got to be that going within that submission and changing hearts.
Yeah. And I will say, so now, where we are now, we go to a great church that I feel like spiritually feeds me the way that I need to be fed. And we go every Sunday, Wednesday. My husband's in a men's group there. Our family is walking this thing out with the Lord. We are sold in. And I feel like my husband has a big part of that. Obviously, it's all the Lord. Right. Glory to Him.
Yeah.
But my husband is a big part of that, because he makes it known that this is what our family's going to serve the Lord.
Yeah.
and I have my sister who I don't know what I would do without her and you. I want to add in there because I was walking this thing out with this job I had, and I was still straddling the fence a little bit, because that was the beginning where I was, I said, all right, Lord, I'm sold in for you, but then if you're not spiritually where you need to be and reading your Bible and prayed up, and you walk into the world with some of the people you work with, you will easily find yourself back where you don't want to be, or drifting back, where you get into conversations you don't really want to be in, or you laugh about jokes you shouldn't laugh at, and then when you stepped in, you're an atmosphere changer, and you stepped in, and I said, oh, I can be bold and courageous like she is, because she loves Jesus, and I love Jesus, and Jesus radiates off of you. So I was like, oh man, I want that. I can do that. Now, am I as bold and courageous as you? No.
Sometimes you are.
But like we say, it takes it takes everybody. And so when you stepped in, I was like, okay, I can do this. Yeah. And it really just clicked. And then I go home and I have a spiritual husband. I have you at work. I have my sister who you ain't getting none of that, sir. No. You'll find that out. And so just having the three of you around me daily not only pushes me, but makes me realize that, okay, I can do this and I'm not by myself. Right. Because there are days that I'm not always my best self. You'll be at work and you'll be uplifting me. And then there'll be times when my husband needs uplifting, or you need uplifting, or I don't ever really feel like my sister needs uplifting. I feel like the Lord just kind of has her on this cloud floating up, but you'll find that out. So just, I feel like once you do get to this place, having people around you is the most important thing. Right.
So let me ask you, with all this change that is happening, and we've talked about the before, and Jesus has stepped in, what, not just your husband, not your family, but you personally, what do you feel like are some changes and some differences in you, your mentality of life, the way you're walking, your goals, your expectations, like your mindsets, like where are you at now in the middle of all of this?
Well, I feel like I'm at a place now where it's okay if people disappoint you, because they're going to disappoint you.
Because we're humans.
Daily. There are going to be people that leave you, and the people that leave you, that's okay. They're supposed to. I feel like now I have a relationship with the Lord that no matter who leads me or who disappoints me, He's always there. Right. And that's all I need. Yeah. If everybody around me walks away, just knowing that I have Him, I'm good. Yeah. And just when you get to that place, you can really start trying to let some walls down. Do I think that I have every wall dropped? No, probably not. But again, we talk daily. I'm like, the Lord daily works on me. He works on my mouth. There are times where I'll be quick to say something. I'm like, Jesus. Holy Spirit says no. And sometimes with my anger, I feel like it's gotten a lot better. Am I perfect at it? I still don't like change. Change still is a trigger for me. But, I just pray and I'm like, all right, Lord, show me where I'm supposed to be in this. And, just be with me in these moments that I get anxious when change happens.
Do you think that there will be a moment where change doesn't affect you? Like, do you think that that's possible? Or do you think that because it's been part of you for so long, it's just become almost like a part of your DNA?
Well, I feel like the more spiritually mature you get, I feel like there will be a day where that doesn't, because you got to think, only 2 years ago did I even step on and say, okay, I'm submitting to you. Right. It's only been 2 years, Yes, the Lord can make changes overnight, but He's not going to do that. He's going to say, okay, well, what are you going to do? Yeah. How are you going to walk this out? Or are you going to be able to withhold through the temptations and the moments that you get put in, and the changes and the, this and the disappointments and stuff? Like, how are you going to react to that? So I feel like the Lord's going to allow me to go through some changes, just to see spiritually mature, where are you? So I think, there will be a day where I'll just be like, it is what it is.
I just think you say that so you can have accountability.
Well, and you gotta think I have a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
So I'm sure in the next few years there'll be some changes coming. Some changes that I'm not gonna be happy about at all. Yeah. But I got some time to.
We talked about a couple weeks ago, something at work one day when you got saved. You said you were still smoking weed and stuff. Will you tell us that story and how God just kind of just
it was a revival when I went up there to the altar that night. I was like, all right, Lord, I'm submitting to you, and I went home that night and still felt the urge, and I was like, God, you have to take it away. The desire that I have, you have to, because I cannot do it by myself. Literally woke up the next day, and from that moment on, I have not had one desire at all. Not one. If I even smell it or think about it, I'm like, that's disgusting. Like he literally took it. And even a peace with my brother-in-law, there was a time where I was like, Lord, I cannot get rid of this guilt no matter what I do. Like I can't stop thinking about it. Thinking about the moment, thinking about how he felt, thinking about how his kids feel, like thinking about all these things, and like he's literally taken it. Just took it.
Yeah.
He's like, girl, stop talking about it.
Right.
I already had it. And it's just when you have those encounters, you're just like, you cannot convince me that the Lord is not real, one. And two, there's a big difference in being a pew warmer Christian and a lukewarm Christian and one that has a relationship. You can't convince me of anything differently. And we're not going to get anywhere being lukewarm, especially these days.
Right.
Lukewarm is not going to get you anywhere.
Right.
We're in the days now where we need those soldiers rising up.
Right.
We need the army rising up.
Yeah.
Ready to get as many people in that boat as we can.
No more CEOs.
Yeah.
No more CEOs.
No more. I'm sold in.
All right. So do you have one final thing that if you had to just kind of close this whole episode with, anything that you kind of would want to share or say or feel like you didn't get to say or something?
Well, I just feel like when you're in those moments of hopelessness and you feel like there's no way out and you feel like you're just in this dark hole and you can't dig yourself out of it and you feel as if you are so unworthy of anything, of anybody loving you, of being worthy of anybody's time, I would say just look up, because he's there.
Yeah.
He's just holding his hand out, waiting for you to grab it. And until I grabbed his hand and literally just let him hug me and hold me, I was always going to stay in that hopelessness.
Yeah.
That unworthy, always looking over my shoulder of who's going to get me, kind of thing. I don't feel like that anymore. I feel like now I can breathe, relax a little bit.
If you could tell 4-year-old Monica one thing, what would you tell her?
Girl, just keep going. Just keep going. Just one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. Everything's going to be okay. It's all going to work out in the end. You just got to keep moving, keep trucking, and just forget about all those bad things that, are happening to you.
Awesome. Well, I love you, and I love your story. The ups, the downs, the ins and the outs of it. It makes you who you are, and it makes it's taken me months to convince you to do this, because, and I always would use the verse which we seem to use every time we do one of these episodes, is you overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony.
Well, that's true.
Just the words that you shared, your story. How many people are watching that have been that little girl, have been that boy, who didn't have a constant family, or maybe there was abuse, there was trauma, there was adoption, there was whatever it's been that you've walked through. How much hope can they now have because you were daring enough to share your story and trusted me in this space enough to share your story? And so I want to thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it more than what you know, because you can tell a story that I can't tell. And even parts of your story, I'm still in awe. I can't believe that actually happened. It's
and for all the kids in foster care right now, thinking that there's no way out, and thinking, nobody loves me. Here I am with this one bag of all the things that are the most precious and, most important thing to me in a garbage bag, packing around from here to there to there. Just look up. Jesus is the only father that you'll ever need. No matter if there's a verse in Psalms that I've always clung on to. Don't quote me. When your father and mother forsake you, the Lord will lift you up. And that's true. because our mothers and fathers are humans as well.
Right.
And, sometimes they don't know what they're doing. And sometimes, they're too far gone or too far, in their battles that they kind of just forsake you.
Right.
But the Lord never will.
Yeah.
And He's really the only Father we ever need.
And on that note, I want to end with, you still have a relationship with your biological mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And tell us what happened recently.
She's been saved.
Yeah.
Like over the last few years, living for the Lord. I mean, she's got some really bad health problems right now, with cancer and stuff, but she's saved and she's going to heaven.
And you guys have had conversations, right?
Yeah.
You told me y'all had conversations about it.
I've forgiven her.
Yeah.
She's really told me her story, and even before she told me her story, I always feel like, what did she go through?
Right.
The curse, the generational curse wasn't broke with her, but it was broke with me.
Yeah.
So now my children and their children and their children will never have to go through that again because we broke it.
That's right.
So she needs grace and mercy as well.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Whew, that was a good one. Man, it's just, I love talking, but I love talking about things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I love talking about things that will change people's lives. And you, my friend, I guarantee have changed people's lives today. So on that note, we're going to end with a little something fun that we've been doing. If you had to pick one Bible verse in the Bible that you just like your life verse, or that just really speaks to you, or it could be just right now. You don't have to give me the reference if you don't know. Your husband flipped his Bible open and it literally,
of course he did,
fell straight to
was Isaiah 61?
It sure was.
Okay. Yeah, I hear about that one.
Yeah. I mean, he's like, I probably could open my Bible to it. And he just flips it open.
Him and my sister.
So if you had to pick a Bible verse that you don't have to flip open a Bible to, what would it be?
It would definitely be the Psalms.
Yeah.
When your mother and father forsake you, the Lord will lift you up. That literally I heard in the Sunday school class when I was probably 10 years old, and I've never forgotten it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I love that. I think it resonates with me the most.
Absolutely. Who, besides Jesus, who's your favorite person in the Bible?
Probably Matthew.
Yeah.
Honestly, because a lot of people hated him. They didn't like him.
He's a tax collector.
Yeah. And then look at him.
He's just doing
He dropped it all and was like, all right, Lord, I'm sold out for you.
Right.
That's how I feel like I've been. There were so many times I thought people hated me, or I wasn't good enough, not worthy. And then the whole time it's like, the Lord needs me too.
Yeah.
He loves me. He doesn't need me, but
He does need you.
Yeah. But, yeah.
When you get to heaven, or if you could talk to anybody in the Bible or talk to, who would you want to have a conversation with or talk with?
I know what my sister would say.
I want to know what you would say.
I know what she would say. Probably Moses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why Moses?
Because he experienced the Lord more than anybody. The Lord spoke to him, and he was like, literally, his hands and feet here. And I just think he's got a lot of stuff to tell. Or Abraham. One of them.
I mean, Moses saw a bush burning.
Man, he saw.
He's walked through a sea, clouds of fire, food on the ground. Bruh's seen some things.
Yeah, I don't want to talk to him.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. If you could tell anybody in the world anything about the Lord, what's one thing that you would tell them?
Oh, man. He doesn't give up on you. No matter what. No matter how much you run from him, he never stops chasing you. He leaves the 99 for you. You, the one that you didn't think was worthy of it. There he is chasing after you.
No longer the little girl in the lookbook. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
You got value, and I love that you are starting to see that and experience that and share that with the world. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. We didn't cry.
No, we did.
We teared up a few times.
Yeah, that was the Lord.
we have our box of Kleenex right here just in case we had it. So thank you again so much for being here.
I'm honored.
You have blown my mind, and I'm so excited about people being able to hear this story. And thank you again for the support that comes from you and your family. We have a special guest coming up next week. I'm so excited. Your 15-year-old daughter is going to be with us telling her story from the other side. So
That's
I'm
gonna be fun.
excited to have her with us next week. But for this week, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of God's Coffee Call. I appreciate it. Please, again, subscribe to us, like us, share this story with someone who's been maybe in foster care, who's walked through some trauma. Maybe they're going through it. Maybe they're a foster parent who just needs to figure out how to relate to somebody that they're taking into their home. There's so many nuggets in here that can relate to so many people. So thank you guys so much for coming to God's Coffee Call. Until next time, I pray that your coffee is strong and that your heart is full and that you remember God never gives up on you. I'll see you next week.